Hello, welcome to my channel. I'm Claire Francis. Today I have something a little bit different for you. We're going to have a look at the fashion industry and some of the effects of the fashion industry on the environment. Now, I love fashion. I'm sure if you've clicked on this, you love fashion, but I thought it would be good to have a look at some of the ways we can actually make better choices. So today we're going to look at the fashion industry and have a look at some of the environmental credentials of the industry and how we can actually make choices to be slightly better for the environment. So I hope you're going to watch today. It is a little bit different, but it's something that I've been thinking about doing since I started my YouTube channel about 9 months ago. I've been buying quite a lot of clothes as I have a year of updating and modernising my wardrobe. But I will at some point have to reevaluate how much clothing I am actually buying. So let's have a look at some facts on the fashion industry. 10% of global carbon emissions are caused by the fashion industry. That's actually more than the aviation industry, which might come as a bit of a surprise. And 20% of industrial water pollution is produced by the fashion industry. The fashion industry uses huge amounts of water to make some materials, and a lot of toxic chemicals are used in the manufacturing process and or released into waterways. Also, 20 to 35% of microplastics in the ocean are derived from fashion industry. So again, that's something that can be affecting wildlife and causing lots of environmental damage. Huge amounts of clothing ends up in landfill. Apparently only 1% of fabric is actually recycled at the moment into other clothing and other products. So that's not a huge amount. A lot of it does end up going to landfill. And our over-reliance on synthetic fabrics, which come from the petrochemical industry, means that a huge amount of those fabrics are not going to be biodegradable. They will end up in landfill. And as I said, there's all the associated problems with the fact that they are coming from the petrochemical industry. So not a particularly good set of statistics on the fashion industry. However, there are strides being made forward to try to ameliorate some of these things, and some companies are doing quite a lot on the sustainability front. Others are doing very little. Some are claiming that they're doing a lot, but actually not doing a lot. So it's quite difficult to get to the bottom of exactly what is going on, and you really need to do your research on individual companies. I did spend a lot of years of my life being a science teacher, where I used to teach a lot about the environment and global warming and things like that. So I did feel a bit of a responsibility to not just carry on using resources and not maybe thinking about them a little bit more consciously. So how can we make more sustainable choices? So number one is to choose fabrics more carefully. So I've got a little list here. Some of the worst fabrics for us to choose are the synthetic fabrics like polyester, rayon or nylon, acrylic, and ordinary cotton as well are not particularly good for the environment. So they're fabrics to avoid where possible, not always able to avoid them completely. Some materials that claim to be environmental as well, like viscose and acetate, are a little bit better, but again, they can, although they're produced from sources like wood pulp, cellulose fibres from wood pulp, the processing of them can sometimes result in environmental harm. There is something called bioacetate, which has slightly better environmental credentials. So that's something to consider when looking at products made of acetate. So better fabrics for the environment are things like recycled wool and cashmere, or recycled cotton and linen. Also, organic cotton and linen will be produced in a way that does not involve as many things like pesticides and toxic chemicals and things. So that's a good option. There is also sustainably sourced cotton, which is not necessarily organic, but it is produced in a way that uses less water, so is less damaging than normal cotton, which can result in huge amounts of water being used. And in fact, in one country, there's actually a massive lake that's now been dried up completely because of cotton production. So not ideal. So there is sustainably produced cotton. And in fact, Marks and Spencer's have vowed to try and make all their cotton sustainably produced by 2026. So that is a good thing. And actually several of the items I bought recently from M&S have said sustainably produced cotton. Organic hemp is another good fibre. Looking at slightly more synthetic fabrics, lyocell and tencel as well are a good option. And modal and recycled polyester is another good one, often known as Ecovero. That is something that obviously is taking the polyester and using it again, and therefore giving it a longer life, making it more useful. So any of those fabrics will be more sustainable and will help the environment. So that's something to consider. Those materials may cost you a little bit more. For example, a couple of weeks ago, I was talking to you about Nobody's Child that uses organic cotton. They could be up to 50% more expensive than some of the brands that use just normal cotton. So you have to sort of weigh up, expense versus environment, and not everybody can afford to buy the best quality fabrics, unfortunately. Secondly, another good way to think a little bit about your choices is to buy fewer items but of better quality. You may have noticed when I've been at places like the Barber outlet, I am starting to think about that and thinking that sometimes just buying lots of clothes isn't the answer. Just because you have a lot of clothes in your wardrobe doesn't mean that getting dressed is any easier or that you actually look any better. Sometimes having fewer items of better quality is a really good idea. It will be more sustainable in the long term because those items will last longer, and it will maybe make it even easier to get dressed because you're using those items and then you're just adding one or two newer items in, rather than thinking you've got to buy a whole new set of clothing each season. This leads me on to my third point, which is to try and buy classic foundational pieces in neutral colours where possible, so that you have a good basic wardrobe on which you can then build for different seasons or different fashion trends. But if you have those good foundational pieces, a good pair of jeans, a good tailored jacket, a nice pair of leather boots, those things will last for many years potentially, and you can use them as part of your wardrobe and then possibly just buy in the odd trend-led piece, a couple of times a season. You don't need to actually then buy a whole new wardrobe for each season. You're just adding to your existing wardrobe, which is obviously a lot more sustainable. And now I have 3 ideas as to how you can try and make the most of your clothing when you've actually got it and you're starting to become a little bit fed up with it, or it doesn't fit you, or you just don't like it anymore. Then what can you do? So first of all, one thing I would say is, please, if you buy something, take it home and then decide you don't really like it and you're not really going to wear it, please do send it back. It's easy to let it sit in your wardrobe. Sometimes it's a little bit of an effort or a hassle to take things back, but it is worth doing. Sometimes, you buy something, you try it on first time, looks fine, you think, yeah, I'll probably keep that. And then it sits on your shelf or on a hanger, you haven't used it, you try it on again, and you think, I don't really like it that much. It's not quite the fit that I wanted. It doesn't quite go with some of the clothes that I'm intending to wear it with. Often, many stores nowadays give you 28 days. So I would encourage you, don't cut off the label straight away. Actually, just try it on, over several days, possibly with different things. See if you like it, see if it goes with other things and suits you in your wardrobe before you cut the tags off, because then you can't take things back. So don't immediately rush to cut those tags off. Just leave it a little bit longer and maybe possibly purchase from places that you don't mind taking it back to. I find M&S quite easy to send things back to. I know some companies do make you pay for the postage if you send things back. But again, at least when you buy online, you're not having to actually take your car out or pay for the bus fare or pay for petrol. So you've saved a little bit of money there. So maybe see it as a good thing that, if you do have to pay, at least you haven't wasted that item. It's not just sitting there not being used to be thrown away. And also, obviously, I'm sure most of us do this, when you have items that you no longer want, it's a very good idea to take them to the charity shop. That can be really useful for them. Obviously, you feel you're doing something good because you're giving it to charity. And it also is a way of making those garments be used again, rather than just throwing something in your dustbin to go into landfill. Try and make sure you recycle things like that, send them to charity shops. However, bear in mind, if you're sending very poor quality or damaged items, they probably won't be sold in the charity shop. They're likely to be thrown away or possibly bagged up and sent to third world countries, which again isn't necessarily ideal. So again, we're talking about choosing good fabrics in the first place, aren't we? And I know if people don't send clothing to charity shops, there is always things like Vinted. I know a lot of people sell clothing on Vinted, which gives it another life. So that might be a good way to go as well. And lastly, one idea that I'm coming round to is actually, instead of buying items, particularly if you have an event to go to and you know you're going to buy an item that may only be worn once or twice, consider actually hiring outfits. There are several companies that do that now. And I know, for example, when Boris Johnson's wife got married, she actually hired her wedding dress. And I know I had a family wedding to go to, quite an important family wedding, that I needed a nice outfit to buy. I did buy something that was quite expensive. I've worn it once. I don't actually like it now. It doesn't actually fit me as well now. And I will have to resell that, I think. But I've lost quite a lot of money in the process. It would have been better for me to just pay what seems like quite a lot sometimes just to borrow something, but it would have saved me a lot of money, and then that item can be used multiple times for different people. So that's something to consider for the future. Having researched the fashion industry, it has made me a little bit more thoughtful about the clothes that I buy. So I will be talking to you. You may have noticed recently I've been talking more about fabric composition, and I will be thinking about that when I show you clothes. So it definitely has made a bit of an impact on me looking at some of these things, and I will try and be a little bit more sustainable in my approach to fashion. So I hope you found it useful. What we want is just maybe a little bit of a change in mindset. That's all I'm promoting, really, from just buying things without thinking at all to a little bit of more conscious consumerism, actually thinking about the purchases, thinking about their use to you, thinking about the impact they could have if you don't get a lot of use out of them. So a little bit of a shift in mindset is what I'm encouraging to you to do. But we're not going to be 100% sustainable overnight. We are in some ways waiting for some of these big companies. So any pressure we can put on those companies, as consumers, the only power we have really is to not purchase things that we don't actually agree with ethically. So something you might consider. I do know that cost obviously is a factor for many people, and sometimes we can't buy the best quality materials. But I think all we can do is just make a little bit of effort to just improve where we are at the moment, possibly. And I'd really be really grateful if you could give me your views on the subject. Did you find it useful? Have you found it informative? Will it make you change your purchasing in any way at all? It's just something maybe you'd like to consider in the future. So a little change in focus here. Let's have a look at these beautiful gardens. Now, as you may know, I do love nature and I do love gardens at this time of year particularly. It's one of my favourite things in April and May is to visit and see all the shrubs and trees in blossom and bloom. This is a lovely garden. It's called Mturn Magna Gardens, which are in mid-Dorset. And beautiful small gardens, but this time of year look absolutely amazing. You can see all the different shrubs there in bloom. There's a little stream, a little river running through the middle there. And it's a lovely place to spend a few hours at this time of year. And while we're here, let's have a look at the outfit. The red dress is from Phase 8. That is actually responsibly sourced cotton. Phase 8 are trying to make all of their cotton sustainable. At the moment, 80% of their cotton is sustainable. So that's where the dress is from. The jacket is a cotton, 100% cotton. Actually, I think it's got a tiny bit of elastane in. Probably not responsibly sourced, but hopefully it's an item I'll keep in my wardrobe for a long time. I've had it for a few years already and I'll get good use out of it. The bag is leather from Marks and Spencer's. Again, hopefully that will last quite a few years. And trainers, well, we've got the Samba trainers, not always a sustainable thing, trainers, use a lot of synthetic materials and things, but the companies are trying to improve that. I will try and keep these Sambas and wear them for several years until they actually do wear out. So that's all for this week. Next week, hopefully, I will be back with a fashion video. But again, as I said, you might see my mindset change a little bit and I will be talking more about fabric composition and environmental credentials, but we're still going to be able to enjoy fashion. I haven't got to the end of my year yet, so I've still got the summer season to go, and then, as I said, maybe I'll be buying in a slightly different way after that. So thank you very much for watching. Do hope you've enjoyed the video. Have a good week, and I look forward to seeing you next week. Thank you and goodbye.